Good evening. My name is Stephen Wish, and I'm a member of AJC's National Board of Governors. It is my great honor this evening to present AJC's Moral Courage Award to two most deserving recipients. Please turn your attention to the screens behind me. I'm sorry, this is not supposed to be. Okay, here we go. On July 4th, 1976, Americans celebrated the bicentennial of our great nation. Half a world away, as you just saw, Israeli forces were springing into action. Under the command of the legendary Yoni Netanyahu, the elite Sayeret Matkal unit landed in Entebbe, Uganda, stormed the airport, rescued over 100 hostages, and took off again. They were on the ground for only 40 minutes. The story of how the hostages came to be in Entebbe is well known. Palestinian and German terrorists, united by their shared hatred for Israel, hijacked an Air France flight en route from Tel Aviv to Paris. At gunpoint, they forced the pilot, Michel, Bacos, to land the plane in Entebbe, Uganda. When the terrorists landed in Uganda, they freed most of the non-Jewish passengers. The Jews on the flight became their hostages. As part of that selection process, so reminiscent of an earlier time, they told Bacos, who was not Jewish, that he and his crew were free to go. But the pilot said no. As long as any of his passengers were being held, he would remain. Michel and the crew became hostages, risking their lives because they refused to abandon their Jewish passengers. While the terrorists held over 100 hostages in the airport in Entebbe, Israel, Israel was exercising all diplomatic options to try to end the situation and bring the hostages home. When these possibilities were exhausted, Israel's military brass drafted a daring plan, Operation Thunderbolt. With Navigator Tzvi Har-Nevo charting the challenging course and directing the lead plane, a small Israeli fleet took off for Entebbe. Flying low under the cover of darkness, the commando team waited for the green light from Israel. When it finally came, Tzvi brought the planes in for a landing. In the end, the Israeli team safely rescued all but 4 of the hostages. In the course of the operation, Yoni Netanyahu, the brilliant leader, was killed. Yoni is rightly remembered as a hero. Tonight we want to honor 2 more. And tellingly, they both told us they are not heroes. But of course they are. They truly are. Michel Bacos, the Air France pilot, stood up to the terrorists and told them that if his Jewish passengers were not free to leave, then he too would stay. Tzvi Har-Nevo was crucial to the mission's success, as his fleet sought to avoid detection by many enemy states. His navigation, when navigation was a lot more complicated than it is today, got the Israeli commandos to Entebbe, and just as importantly, brought the precious cargo back home. Tzvi and Michel and Michel stared down enemies and stood up for innocent people. They risked their lives to safeguard others. They displayed tremendous moral and physical courage in the face of daunting odds. And so tonight we honor Tzvi Har-Nevo and Michel Bacos for all that they did 40 years ago. AJC recently traveled to Nice, France, earlier this year to present the Moral Courage Award to Michel Bacos. His son, Jean-Claude, is at the AJC Global Forum, here to represent his father. Please welcome him to the stage.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have the privilege tonight to represent Michel Bacos, my father, the captain who was hijacked to Entebbe in 1976. And a little side comment for Mr. Gilbert, who opened the session. Michel Bacos was also an SPD Dauntless pilot during the war, free volunteer to join the US Navy on aircraft carriers. Closing the bracket, Mr. Gilbert. As Michel Bacos is not here tonight, I'm going to share a message on his behalf. First of all, he would like to thank AGC for this incredible award happening 40 years after the event. And actually, I think he strongly believes that he's only done his duty across this time. When you take the responsibility of an Air France captain, you don't leave your passengers behind. And when you are facing the unacceptable, a wall to separate Jewish and non-Jewish, described yesterday as a crime, he decided to take his name off the free hostages list and go back to that role, which was meaning 2 days later, with a high probability execution. Then from that point that was quite life-threatening, he decided not to give any command to his crew. And despite that, just leading by example, the entire crew actually followed him behind that wall with the passengers. So I know a lot of them, and Michel Bacos are live on following this event. Yes, Monsieur le Premier Consul de France, this is an Air France crew. From this point of no return, from this point of very little hope, we need to acknowledge the incredible courage of the Tsar commandos. Yes, because on the 3rd of July at 4 p.m., 4 Hercules took off under the leadership of General Don Chamron and Lieutenant Colonel Yoni Netanyahu, with no authorization as yet. It is only 2 hours later that finally, very courageously, at the time Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and his Defense Minister Shimon Peres let finally the airplanes continue their journey, thanks God, 4,000 kilometers away from the shores of Israel. And just to picture that incredible event, I have this shot from pilot Amnon Alivni. He told us when he got back they were flying so low that they could see the waves in the ocean and the elephant in Africa. Tirza, I know you are following this event from Tel Aviv. It's 3 a.m. over there. Amnon is really a hero as well. And so, 40 years after the event, Michel Bacos would like to share that his thoughts are deeply with the whole Netanyahu family as Yoni never came back from Entebbe. Moreover, he would like to mention another symbol, great symbol of courage from Entebbe, Sorin Hershu, commando parachutist, who was injured at Entebbe, who is still tetraplegic. Sorin, I know you are watching live also from Tel Aviv with Zabrowski and many friends around you. It is fantastic, and Michel would like to share all of this with you tonight. You have an amazing courage, so thanks to you, Sorin, thanks to the guys from the units, Sariyet Matkal, the passengers, the crew, and the captain are alive today. So really a big thank you to you. And honestly, we couldn't stop here, so it is really important to acknowledge that when you have a military mission and when you have a success rate that goes beyond 50, 60% of potential losses, perhaps 100%, the sensible decision is not to go. And there's only one crowd of the planet that dare to go, the Israeli Defense Force, the commandos. And this is really a huge moment of my personal life to ask on stage one of the representatives, Zvi, who was leading plane number 1. So, Zvi, please join me on stage.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm standing here tonight as a representative of all the soldiers that participated in the Entebbe raid. I was born in Tel Aviv, 1943, joined Israel Air Force in 1961, and received my Navigator wings in 1963 from our late President Asa Weizmann, who was at the time the Air Force commander. 1976, I was a bit younger, with a wonderful wife who is sitting next, right here, and 2 lovely children. My third child was born later, so today I am a father of 3 children, a grandfather of 5 grandchildren. The eldest is serving in the Air Force, of course, and his name is Jonathan. In 1976, I wore 3 hats. I was a law student, a navigator in the Air Force as a reserve forces, and an employee of El Al, also as a navigator. On the afternoon of Thursday, June the 1st, I received a cryptic phone call telling me to attend a military briefing the next day at 2 p.m. I left home Friday afternoon, driving very carefully to my base. I knew what this briefing must be about. Knowing our Prime Minister, the late Yitzhak Rabin, I knew there was only one option. We would flying to Entebbe. One thought ran through my mind again and again. I wanted to be the lead navigator for the mission. Why? Because in the Air Force, we were taught to take responsibility. The opportunity to lead this mission would be a reward for thousands of hours of training every week, twice a week, 3 times a week, for 52 weeks a year, along the years. With all that preparation, I knew that I was ready, mentally and professionally, to lead the mission. I entered the briefing room and went directly to the board where the mission assignments were posted. I saw that my name was a part of the leading team, and only then I asked to see the maps. I was thrilled, tensed, and satisfied all at the same time, knowing that my life and my service had all been leading up to this moment. We took off from Sharm el-Sheikh the next day, buckling in for a dangerous 7-hour flight. We'd be staying low, flying through the night over the dark terrain of Africa. Our maps had not been updated for years. There was no GPS, no anything like that. The only navigation facilities I had were a compass and radar. I needed to harness every ounce of focus and skill to ensure that we did not deviate from the planned route and from our scheduled timing. We landed in Entebbe at 11 o'clock p.m., the exact time we planned to land there. The shooting began 5 minutes later. My team remained in the plane, the engines running, ready to take off as soon as everyone was back on board. As we waited, we heard over our radio that Yoni Netanyahu, who led the attack inside the airport terminal, was wounded. It was a sad moment, a shocking moment. I still think of Yoni today and remember his bravery, his heroism, and his moral courage. Once we had Yoni and his men and more than 100 freed hostages on board, we took off, landed at Nairobi, and took off once again, heading home to Israel. I was raised in a religious family. My father was a rabbi. And so in that moment, I thought of a line from the Passover Haggadah, which says, "And the Lord brought us forth out of Egypt, not by the hand of an angel, and not by the hand of a seraph, and not by the hand of a messenger, but the Holy One in this glorious person," etc. That night, God stepped down from his throne and carried us in his hand to Entebbe, in Entebbe, and back home. And only then, the mission a success, the hostages safe, did he return to heaven with Yoni in his arms and a smile on his face. I called my wife when we landed. She heard my voice. She couldn't utter a word. She burst into tears and hung up on me. I hope that Israel will never need to perform such an operation again. But if we ever do, I know that we'll do it with the same efficiency, with the same belief, and hopefully with the same outcome. Thank you all. Thank you for listening to my words tonight. And thank you for this great honor. And thank you, most of all, for supporting Israel. Thanks.
Zvi, in 1976, I was a 15-year-old boy.
I was 33.
And you and your team were my hero. So
Wow.
it's such a distinct pleasure for me to
Wow.
give you this Moral Courage Award from AJC tonight. Congratulations and thank you. Just a few more words. Zvi, when I hear your story, and Jean-Claude, when I think about what your father did, I can't help but ask myself what I would have done. Were I the pilot of the Air France Flight 139, would I have stayed with my passengers when given the opportunity to leave? Would I have been brave enough to participate in the daring rescue mission, Zvi, that you so skillfully navigated? I do know that in today's world, where Jews are still being targeted because they are Jews, where Israel still faces the scourge of terrorism, examples of true moral courage are rare and precious sources of inspiration and hope. We crave them, we need them, and we've just witnessed two of them here before us. And it's in that uplifting spirit that I can think of no better way to conclude tonight's wonderful program than by singing the national anthem of the State of Israel, so aptly titled Hatikva, the Hope. The words are in your program.